Start.
Just read Meridian and
Fire now.
Be Meridian. If there's still active shooting, we'll take the Bearcat, head that way.
39. Upper Sioux, it's going to be Locust Grove and U-Stick, and they just put out a shot flyer, just, on the route.
This is the 1032 podcast, where we interview experts in firearms and training with law enforcement, military, and competitive shooting backgrounds.
Lead the way.
All right, we're back. I've taken a kind of a leave of absence. Haven't heard any podcasts for the last few months. I got tied up doing other things, and then we had the holidays. But today is the first year of 2025, and our first interview here. And I got a friend of mine, Doug, and I've known Doug through law enforcement circles back in the day. I can't remember how we got hooked up, but we hooked up one day somehow through some law enforcement, probably training, and then found out you were working with the Metro SWAT team down in Vegas. And I asked to do some ride-alongs, and you hooked me up with a couple ride-alongs with the SWAT team down there. And I was really impressed because I felt like, man, these guys are a full-time team and got a lot of training, a lot of call-out experience. And I thought, man, these guys are really humble. I expected guys to be a little bit more macho than that. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Doug. You're actually were a cop in Idaho before you went down there, Vegas, right?
Yeah, I did. I started my career over in Idaho Falls on the east side of Idaho back in 1992.
92?
Yeah, which was, my uncle was a cop over there, so that I was going to school over there and hanging out with him on the weekends and got the adrenaline and just...
got the adrenaline bug and wanted to keep doing it, huh?
Yeah, and again, got lucky to get a job over there for a couple of years, and then I went down to Vegas, which is my home, and so I went...
So you're not an actual Idaho guy. You just went to school here? Is that what it was?
Well, I was going to college over on the east side, and my uncle lived here. I had two uncles that lived here my entire life, so I'd always, at times, come up. So
yeah.
I'd been familiar with the east side over there, but I wasn't from here. I was living with my uncle, hanging out, trying to go to school a little bit, and I liked it a lot. But it was good.
And so then you worked here for a few years in Idaho, and then you went down to Vegas.
Yep.
What took you down there? That was just because it was your hometown and trying to make some more money?
Right. Yeah, I was not making any money in Idaho Falls, and I had a kid, and I started doing the math that no matter where I lived, college costs the same for kids, and cars cost the same, and at that point, things didn't look well financially for me. In Vegas was very tempting. Plus, my mom lived down there, and my brothers and sisters.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And stuff. So, and then I did a couple ride-alongs with Vegas, and that really hooks you when you go and...
They're a little busier down here.
Yeah. I did a ride-along down there. We had 3 armed robberies in a day, and we hadn't had one in Idaho Falls in the last 6 months, And so it was... Doing that stuff was fun, and it was addicting, very addicting. So.
Things have changed, though, a little bit in Idaho Falls. It seems like you see a lot of stuff on the news. And
yeah, I'm sure it's grown a lot since it's been 30 years. So.
Yeah, they have their share of, seems like, of officer-involved shootings in eastern Idaho,
All of Idaho
seems
to,
Yeah, all of Idaho, especially this area. And then when you were with Vegas, you worked patrol for a little while, and then you started working on the SWAT team.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that easy. I worked patrol, and then I went to narcotics for several years, for 5 years, and then I lucked into getting on the SWAT team. I tried it out a couple times, and
so is it pretty competitive getting on the SWAT team down there?
Very competitive. At the time, there was only 26 full-time operators, and I lucked in because I came out number 3 on the list, and I knew they had 2 spots open. The third one, I got lucky, a guy promoted to sergeant. When you promote to sergeant, they take you off the team and you go back to patrol. And that was lucky that for me that he did well enough on the test to promote that one more spot came up. So I lucked onto the team there. So I was very fortunate.
That's awesome. And then, so what was the tryouts like? Do you remember?
Yeah, tryouts back then, they weren't as tough as they are now. It was a couple days of work, but mainly, it's the standard. You start with your shoot. It's 90% on the qual. If you can't do a 90, you're done. You're out. And you get one shot, and that's it. And the morning I did mine, my Glock broke, and I had to borrow somebody else. that messed with me psychologically. But
I didn't know Glocks break.
Yeah, the spring broke. Yeah, it was crazy. I think I'd been practicing so much leading up to it that, yeah. But anyway, so I'd borrow somebody else, got through it. And then we had a pretty vigorous PT test. Mm-hmm. It used to be a lot of running back then. We'd run through Arroyo in the desert out there where the Vegas ranges and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And different things to jump through, all that kind of stuff. So those PT tests, and then back then it was a pretty rigorous oral board in front of all the command staff and stuff like that.
They probably expect you to know things like some case law, some use of force stuff, that kind of thing, right?
And
in your oral board.
Everybody on the team, what the positions do, all the different weaponry, all of that. You better have known something about that. And
so they want to know that you did some research into the team, so you know what you're getting yourself into, right?
Yeah, they're not looking for guys who just show up out of a whim. They look for guys who've been showing up. They look for guys who've been practicing with them. Who've been being role players and stuff like that, who show the commitment.
So they want guys who have the drive and the passion for SWAT itself, not just, hey, I'm a cop and.
Right. Yeah. It's not just a cool job.
Yeah.
Because what people don't know is all the work that goes in behind it.
Yeah.
You're going to be a good SWAT operator. It's a ton of work.
Yeah.
And it's
a lot of work, but it is a cool job, though.
It is. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, it's just like any successful organization. You got to do a lot of work.
So you do some shooting. It sounds like shooting was pretty important. You had to score pretty high, then some physical fitness tests and oral boards.
And then the oral boards, it's actually got way more complicated over the years as we progress there. It's much more difficult now. But
so would you make it now?
I'd hope so. I don't know. Oh man. So.
That's what I look back when I was on our SWAT team here in Ada County. And the same thing when I went through my testing process, I'm like, I don't think it was as hard as it is now. So now I look back, I'm like, I wonder if I would make it if I was a new guy today.
Yeah, I think if I was a new guy, physically I could do it. Mentally, I like where I'm at way better nowadays.
So then you get on the team, and then what happens after that? Are you like on a probationary period? Do they put you through some training, send you some schools? What do they do?
Yeah, you go to the SWAT school there, and they have their own, everything in Vegas for the most part's in-house. So you go to SWAT school. Your first year, your whole thing is being a dedicated infantryman, and then they'll get you qualified on gas and low lethal munitions and stuff like that. And so you'll carry a gas bag with you, and we either had 37s or 40s back then, and you're shooting one of those, and so that's one of your primary jobs for that first year. Mm-hmm. And then they try to get you involved in everything you can in that first year. You're doing all sorts of stuff, but you're also doing all the crap work too. You're picking up vehicles so other guys don't have to. You're doing all sorts of stuff, and which is great. It teaches you everything about the place. So they've got a
what kind of weapons
program and stuff.
What kind of weapons were you guys carrying? Just like your personal stuff.
So back then, when it first got on, we could carry anything we wanted pistol wise. So I just had a Glock 17. I just carried my own personally owned Glock. We later changed about a year later, and we all went to matching Glock 17Cs for everybody on the team. But we were all given Colt M4. Mm-hmm. We had an MP5. Those were your two primary entry rifles. But Vegas, they use a lot more rifles nowadays than when I was there as far as entry guns, but they still use quite a bit of pistols as entry guns. Yeah. So, that's what we started with. The MP5s we used for a while, but
kind of the standard, but everybody was using back
just
in
the
the day.
9mm and just people start to stop carrying them and use them just for the Boy Scout shoots. And
the MP5s. Yeah, I love the MP5. It's still probably one of my favorite guns ever. But yeah, it's kind of as far as operationally, it's kind of a dinosaur now.
Yeah, but I hear there's some more teams going back to them nowadays. Yeah. But you know how things go. They're cyclical.
Yep. Things. What do they say? What's old is new again.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
See that a lot.
Yeah, that's what we started with. Yeah, I got a Crown Vic, and we had some lock boxes in the back that would drop down in there, and carry all your gear with you. That was the nice thing. You got a take-home car and all your gear everywhere you went. And
how busy is your team? I know you guys are one of the busiest teams in the country, or probably the busiest team, right?
Yeah. busiest year that we had did over 600 missions as a team. And remember, our team is two full teams in Vegas, two full-time teams. We had 600 missions, but on an average, we were averaging 500 missions a year while I was there.
Okay. And that's combined between the two teams?
That's combined between the two teams,
Yeah.
And almost anybody would spend 1 to 2 to 3 of their days off supplementing the other team, where they'd come in for a couple hours to do a raid or whatever. So even on your days off, you were still grabbing a couple of those warrant services. And that's back when we did everything dynamic.
Yeah. And a mission explain what a mission is. I mean, that could be a combination of a few different things, right?
Right. A majority of our missions were serving search warrants for the department, for all the different detective bureaus or patrol bureaus that needed search warrants served. But then it also incorporates your barricaded subjects and your hostage rescues. And in combination between those two, we averaged about 75 barricades to hostage rescues. And obviously the hostage rescues, you'd get about 3 or 4 a year. So the majority of them barricades.
And so a guy just within 1 year has a lot more experience than a lot of teams nationwide.
Yeah.
Just because of the sheer volume.
Right. And that's where Vegas is really different. Because you think about the California teams, they got a couple full-time teams down in California, and you think, man, they should be doing so many more missions. The difference is in Vegas, we could get around the town, and we could do everything for all of our different bureaus, where the California teams, they still have, their gang units serve warrants, stuff like that, where, when it takes them 2 hours to get someplace, a lot of things are done. Where Vegas, to this very day, they can still get around town in 30 minutes.
Just because of the infrastructure or what?
Yeah, just the way, it's not overcrowded. And because of the infrastructure, there's, in Vegas, it's just a valley. There's no mountains in your way. There's nothing. And it's got a good freeway system so guys can get around and do stuff. And then policy. Our policies came about where it mandated that we served almost everything.
Okay, because I was going to say there's a lot of other units, a lot of other units within the department that serve their own warrants for different things. So how do they decide when SWAT's going to get involved, right? Because a lot of narcotics units serve their own warrants, street crimes units serve their own warrants. How do they decide, okay, hey, the narcotics unit's not going to serve it today, we need to have SWAT involved?
Right, and when I first went to SWAT, narcotics served their own warrants. So the 5 years I was in narcotics, we served our own warrants. Not all of them.
Yeah, because back in the early days, like the 90s and the early 2000s, narcotics guys were just kicking doors like every day, it seemed like, even around here.
Yeah, and we were doing it. It wasn't an everyday thing for us, but we were doing a couple a month. And when I looked back and I learned how to serve a warrant, I realized, holy crap, we were lucky.
Yeah.
We just didn't know what we were doing. So the higher risk ones, SWAT was already serving. If they had bars, weapons, things like that.
Yeah.
Then narcotics wasn't allowed to do it. Then unfortunately.
So you say bars, so you're talking about how well fortified the location was?
Right. In Vegas specifically, there's a lot of the rougher neighborhoods and just a lot of the regular neighborhoods now have, bars on their doors and bars on their windows and all those things that make it so tough to get into that. The narcotics teams didn't have, any kind of breaching besides a ram. They didn't have any kind of ballistic breaching or anything like that. And so that it made it where they weren't going to achieve their goal. They weren't going to be able to, because back then we were chasing dope, trying to prevent the destruction of evidence, which doesn't really exist any longer.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the capability of doing that. And then, so they were still serving theirs probably until maybe my second year in SWAT. And then they shot an unarmed man during one of their narcotics search warrant services.
So a narcotics unit shot an unarmed person. So it wasn't
a guy who was fleshing dope, and they shot him.
So was it considered not a good shoot?
The guy wasn't criminally prosecuted today. That might be a different thing.
Yeah.
They might prosecute him today. That was that would have been about 2005.
Okay, so that's been
different world back then.
About 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, it was hardcore. SWAT is serving everything, and that's when our missions really spiked.
So they considered, hey, that's probably wasn't the best outcome that we would like, so we're going to use SWAT, who maybe trains a little bit more.
That's 100%. They realize narcotics guys don't have time to train on doing search warrant service because they're busy doing surveillance. They're busy writing their warrants. They're busy doing their work.
Yeah.
So how do you expect them to be good at two things?
Yeah,
Right?
and I think over the years talking to different guys who were on narcotics units, especially back during the 90s and 2000s when the narcotics units were serving a lot of their own warrants. I remember having discussions with some of these guys, and they would tell me, "Oh yeah, we're really good because we serve these warrants all the time," and coming from where I was working with the Department of Energy, where we did a lot of training, right? And I started kind of thinking back about some of the stuff I'd done early on. I was like, man, maybe we weren't doing things correctly, and we're just lucky that the bad guy decided not to shoot at us. And so sometimes I think some of these units can get overconfident because they've never been in a shootout. They've never had anybody really, oppose them or confront them. And so sometimes they get that false sense of security that they're good at what they're doing, even though they may not be doing it correctly.
100%. Yeah, and because like I said, I look back at what I'd been doing once I learned how to do it right with SWAT, what we had been doing in narcotics, and thinking, holy crap, we were doing it completely wrong. But you didn't know it at the time. Yeah. You thought you turned your hat on backwards, and you thought you were great.
So with that policy you're talking about, if the location was fortified to a certain level, then SWAT would be used. What about just the suspect himself? Did that determine?
Yeah, that was always taken into consider how much violence that he had shown in his life as a criminal. Especially when it comes to possession of weapons and or the willingness to use them. That always came into factor. That was before the shooting even happened. So.
Let's say that, for example, the suspect had a bunch of violence in his history. Let's say he had a long criminal history with violence. Maybe he threatened to shoot it out with the cops. He says he's not going back to jail. And his house was not fortified. Was SWAT still be used for something like that? Or?
They should be. Yeah,
okay.
They should have been.
Because what I found in my career, several times I'd see where SWAT was not used when I felt like they should be used, right? And of course, this is me coming from being on the team and not being an administrator, right? Where they would say, let's let the street crimes guys go arrest this guy because they're going to try to arrest him not at his house. And because it was not at his house, they didn't want to use SWAT. So they're like, we'll take him down out on the street or on a felony stop. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, the tactics should be left up to the SWAT team, and that we should be used according to what the suspect, if the suspect meets the criteria violent-wise, we should be using the team, not that we are not going to use the team because he's not going to be arrested at home. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, yeah. Because just because you've changed his location doesn't change him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I see that happen, at least, when I was working, a lot of street crimes units would get to serve a warrant or arrest somebody when I felt like it should be the SWAT team. And they're like, well, it's, he's not barricaded. He doesn't have a fortified home, so it's okay to use the narcotics guys or street crimes unit or whoever, right?
Yeah.
Patrol.
I don't agree with that philosophy, but yeah, I've seen that.
You've probably seen that, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, you guys were serving approximately anywhere 500 to 600 warrants or operations a year, and that included warrants, included barricades and hostage rescues,
and also dignitary protection.
Dignitary protection.
Yeah, we
okay.
do that for the
And
agency.
how was that? How did that come about? Or
The
tell us an
dignitary
example
protection?
of something that you guys would do.
Like dignitary wise?
Yeah.
Well, so we had Harry Reid, who ended up being the Senate Majority Leader.
And you guys actually protected him on purpose?
Harry was good to us. Yeah, I mean, we might have differed politically in some of our thoughts, but Harry actually, he was really good to our SWAT team, and probably because we were good to him. Yeah, so he was only protected by the Capitol Police, so he'd have 2 to 4 guys with him as he traveled throughout the country, and at times he would get threats, but we always gave him another 4 to 6 guys plus a couple of vehicles and stuff, and yeah, so we were with him a lot and spent a lot of time with him, and actually he helped us get our first Bearcats. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, and the funny story is, back in the day, our guys, before I got there, they had built a SWAT house, and it was just a little SWAT house up in the desert.
Like a shoot house or something?
Yeah, and being a shoot house, it's a house, but the only way you can shoot, it's in a little canyon, and it's got mountains or hills on 3 of the 4 corners.
Oh, so like natural berms.
Right, and you've seen it. and you
Yeah.
open the windows and you hang targets in the windows, and so you could go through and you could place shoot or no shoot targets in those on those three sides of the house, and so we could shoot that way. So you couldn't shoot. So it wasn't like a real shoot house, but you could shoot through that and do it safely. So they'd done that, and before I ever got there, one day they had day training. They were driving home, and somebody had called one of the other guys, dude, there's a big fire up at the range. And one of their flashbangs that left a burn, and it caught the house on fire. And it's up. And
So the SWAT team burned down their own house?
They burned down their own house, yeah. But there's no water up there. You know, it's in the desert up there. And
So there's no saving it?
No, it was gone. But they had a foundation there, and when they started to rebuild it, they found out, Vegas Metro, you don't own this land. You built this house on the land you don't own. And our whole range backed up to the BLM. And this ended up being on BLM land. And Harry, he ended up getting all that land put into the name of the police department. And so,
nice.
So he did some good things for us. So,
Nice.
you know, but we would do a lot of work for him. But then you got to remember Vegas, we had all sorts of, it was swing state back in the day. So Obama, Kerry, all those guys, when they were running for president, the Bushes and stuff, a lot of time. And so we would supplement the Secret Service CAT teams. We would have CAT teams additionally on that. So we'd be in our Suburbans with guys stacked up inside there, you know, and the job there was completely different, where the Secret Service, their job is to take the president and go. And our job on those situations, we would stay and have the fight. And that's the way so we did a lot of that stuff too. So, so that kept us busy also.
So tell us briefly what the makeup is of the Metro department you worked for, because it's the city of Vegas doesn't have a traditional police department.
Right. In 1973, they joined their city police department with the county sheriff. So the Clark County Sheriff and the Las Vegas City Police Department became one, which they call the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
So really, they're like a contract city to the sheriff.
No, they've married. They are married up. But yes, as far as financing, the county puts money into the agency, and so does the city.
But it's under the sheriff's department, correct?
Right. So they hire police officers, but they are run by a sheriff. It's elected sheriff that runs it, and they have the whole county. You know, the county's like over 8,000 square miles. Majority of it's just desert, but you got Las Vegas, and then you got some little towns on the outside like Laughlin and stuff like that, where they have subdivisions and they control the policing down there. So they run the jail, you know. So it's a pretty unique situation. I mean, we had search and rescue, so we had helicopters and stuff and all that. So yeah, it's an interesting organization. I like that makeup because your sheriff isn't pushed around by a mayor and stuff like that.
Okay. So going back to the SWAT team, so then you had the two teams. So would you guys switch like nights on, then days?
No, we all had our set days. Wednesday was our common day. So you either had a team that worked Sunday through Wednesday or Wednesday through Saturday, and training day was on Wednesdays. Okay. So basically the way it's designed, every other Wednesday was your training day, and then the third Wednesday was both teams together, so if that makes sense. And then we'd have some others.
So you train 1 week just as your own team, and then the next week you combined?
Well, basically 1 week is yours, the next week's the other team, the third week is both teams together, and you just keep that rotation. And then if you had downtime, you know, like for us, I worked Sundays through Wednesdays, so most of us on Sundays, it was our slowest day of the week. You'd start at the range, you know, you'd start out there shooting, you know, so that was always nice. So
you guys would train quite often. It sounds like training was a big deal for you guys.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, and on days that we had nothing going on, we'd get together, we'd go out and train.
So to me, it seems like it would be pretty difficult to train with when you hear 600 missions a year. It seems like that would be pretty.
Yeah. There was a lot of days where we had scheduled training that it just didn't happen. You just had too much going on.
So, did you ever feel like because you were so busy on missions that you would lack in certain things because you didn't have time to train, or did you feel like that those actual missions supplemented your training?
Both. You know, there's some specialties that you can't train on missions, like your snipers.
Sure.
You know, besides the craft, you're not getting your shots in. You know, the breachers, unless you actually have something going on, you know, they're analyzing and stuff like that. They might be building charges, and we did a lot of explosive breaching. You would have over 100 breaches a year, you know. So, but still,
On actual operations?
yeah. But you know, a training day, you know, you're getting 20 breaches in,
Sure.
You know, compared to maybe you did one or two in that afternoon, depending on what warrants you were serving. So, so they both complement each other. You know, the decision making is the beauty of doing the real deal. Especially then we were doing dynamic. You know, and because you've got a new environment, and so you're making mistakes, and you're learning from those all the time. And that was the beauty of it, the way it was back then, which is it's a lot different for all the teams now.
Yeah.
Hardly anybody's going dynamic. So.
And you've gone from a career where you retired from Las Vegas and you moved to Idaho after you retired, and now you're working for an agency here and helping run a team. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. I'd like to talk about, you know, what's the differences, or how hard is it? Is it more difficult or easier to run a part-time team, or what's the disadvantage to being a part-time team? But first, I want to kind of maybe highlight, is there an incident that you want to talk about? I know, you know, even though SWAT teams serve warrants, you know, they arrest people, the dignitary protection, but I think ultimately the purpose of most SWAT teams is to be able to be prepared to do a hostage rescue, right? Is there any incidents that you can remember that you want to highlight, talk to us a little bit about today that maybe some of the other teams or people listening to, like, hey, here's some lessons learned, man?
Oh, we had lessons learned on all of them. You know, looking back, I think I participated in I think I was there for 6, where we ended up shooting and killing guys on full time that they didn't give up, that we had to go in and we had to end it. And I variety of roles in those 6 different ones, and they're all interesting. You learn lessons from all of them. You know, your first one, you'll never forget that one. The first one I had was interesting. It started as a domestic for the patrol guys, early in the morning, and they got there, and it was for the guys who know Vegas at all, down on Twain and Swenson area. It's only a couple blocks from UNLV and a couple blocks from the Las Vegas Strip, and just within a block from the Las Vegas Strip, you start to get into some pretty rough older neighborhoods, and that's what this was. And it's all concrete. It's block construction. This was a 2-story apartment complex, and it's kind of built like an H, if that makes sense. You got 2 long rows, and then you had a middle row of apartments, and the middle row of apartments was just one apartment, and the apartment we were dealing with was in that middle section, so it had 2 other sides. On your 2 side and your 4 side, there was another row of apartments going pretty long. And this one, you couldn't get to the back window because it just dropped off into the courtyard because we were on the 2nd floor. And then on the 2 side, it was dead. 4 sides dead. It had windows on the 3 side. And the front side, you had 1 door and 1 window. And then you had a railing that off the railing you would drop off into the courtyard. So what the situation was, a guy who had been in prison a bunch, who was been doing a bunch of drugs and was psychotic as heck, had come in. It started as domestic, and when the cops got there, they couldn't get in, but they were having communication through the window and through the door with a female and another male, which ends up being the suspect's mother and brother who were living in this apartment. And they could hear all sorts of commotion, but the guys couldn't get in the door, and they end up holding it, and they're trying to negotiate and stuff like that. And the guy's threatening, he's got a gun, he's going to kill these people. So that gets us deployed. I think we got out there about 5 in the morning. I think it started like at 3 or something like that. So that was the situation, and we were able to get our team up there quick and get set up, and they were able to get negotiators negotiated, and they negotiated for a long period of time. And so we got set up in an apartment that was pretty close. We got explosive breaches up. We did one on the door. We did a port on the one side also, and we couldn't do it on the 2 or the 3 because they were so boxed in by the other apartments and a ceiling that the overpressure just would have been way too much in order for us, because they had to go through all that stucco and wire and wood, that the charges were just going to be too big. So we were pretty limited on our operation ability. But as the negotiations progressed, the guy was talking a lot of crazy. We had psychologists out there listening to him and working with our C&T and developing and stuff like that. So as we're sitting there, there's a lot of highs and lows. We're getting ready. Okay, we're down. It's that high and low of up and down. You're tired already, and it's progressing into the day. We got there like 5 a.m. I think it was around 1:30 or so when we actually initiated.
Okay. You guys been there a long time.
Yeah, we've been there a while. Guys are tired. We almost lost an operator because they brought us McDonald's sandwiches. And our buddy Jess,
They can't be good for the stomach.
well, it was worse than that. He'd gone. We're all sitting in this little living room. They're just little 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartments. And Jess had gone back into the other room to eat his, and he comes out. He's got tears running down his face. He'd about choked to death, and nobody knew that he was choking on his gosh darn McGriddle sandwich back there. It was pretty funny. He didn't think so, but we did. So, but it's just those highs and lows. Guys are trying to go through, and you get your assignments. And I just remember, it's one of the greatest lessons of leadership. Bob Montez was our ATL, and just cool as a cucumber all the time. Yeah, Bob spent 25 years on that team. And that was, we talked about earlier, how hard it was to get on the team. Guys would get on that team and never leave. But we get our assignments, and I'm the new guy. Literally, I've been on the team like 3 months. It was Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
is when this was going on. So my role was pretty low on the totem pole on this. But the way that he walked down our stack and looks you in your eye, gives you your assignment, and you just feel that confidence. Yeah, it was awesome.
Feel like you're proud to be part of this team.
Well, yeah, and you just knew the guy next to you was going to be there. And it was great. So we ended up getting the emergency entry based off the statements, and the psychologist had basically determined this was not going to end without him killing his mother and his brother. And so we ended up doing explosive breach, and the guy had barricaded the door, but we had cut the door in half and stuff, and guys manhandled, pushed their way through and got in, and the guy was literally slitting his mother's throat as the time that one of our guys ended it and saved her. And yeah, she had been beat up really bad all through the night. She literally looked like the pictures, if you ever see them, she looked like Throw Mama from the Train after she'd been beat up. I mean, really? It was bad. But they were able to save both those hostages that day. And
so no hostages died?
No. And majority of the injuries had come through and beaten her up all through the night and stuff like that. So,
and do you know how many officers fired on that? Just one? Or?
Just one.
Okay.
It was one to the head, just the way it's supposed to be done.
Nice.
So
good. It's always a good story when you hear the hostages are saved.
Yeah. No, knock on wood, I was never a part of. We never lost one while I was there. So we were very fortunate, and my guys nowadays, they hate it, but the ultimate goal is that C&T talk about. Yeah, that's the win. Sure. When we don't have to.
Yeah. Either way, the hostages are saved.
That's the
right?
goal.
That's the goal.
That's the goal every time.
So on something like that, did you guys do the traditional? Hey, I got my emergency assault team, then I have an immediate action, or you have your immediate action team, emergency assault team, then you have the deliberate team that's over practicing, waiting to switch you guys out. Like traditionally, at least that's the way we were trained back in the day. Right?
And that's not the way Vegas works so much. We didn't do a lot of tape room practice. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good. It's just the philosophy for our guys, and then the amount of reps they had. We take things as they come. Doesn't matter what it is, because what we had known over the years, and we literally had a huge room of files. Every house we ever hit, we would draw the house. because we would hit the same houses over and over and
Sure.
over. And then you would realize, well, the next time we were here 3 years ago, and here we are. When I'm looking at my new draw and my old draw,
Yeah.
they've changed this place. And knowing that it's never going to be the same place. Furniture is going to be somewhere different. Things are just different. We didn't have pre-planned rooms that we would go to. You took it as it came. And so we didn't do a lot of tape work because of that. And so, we didn't have teams just sitting there waiting. You'd have guys at home waiting to come and relieve you.
Yeah.
If it went too long, just
Yeah, 'cause I can imagine, especially in the summer times, as hot as it is, you guys can't be out in the heat for too long.
Yeah, and that's where, and then kind of what I said was kind of incorrect. The guys who would come and relieve us if it took too long was other teams from other cities. Henderson and North Las Vegas, they would relieve us because HRT, both teams would come in. That was automatic. Both teams were there. So, so part of it, you got guys in perimeter positions, and you start taking up so much room. You got your snipers out. You got several of those guys. You're just depleting your guys really quick, and then you got your breachers and everything, and it doesn't take long till you've run out of bodies. It's a lot of work to get that all done. So, and that was a small apartment. You get a real house. It's a ton of bodies needed. Yeah.
So, did you guys train often with those other teams?
We did. Yeah. North Las Vegas and Henderson. Back in those days, we would train with them pretty often. They would come up with us, and we would do stuff with them, and we relieved each other both a couple times, as needed. Yeah. It wasn't it's not what you want to do, but there's times that, you spent 18 hours at 110 degrees, guys are dropping. We had guys literally passing out and needing IV bags and stuff like that. You just can't maintain that.
Yeah, I would think in the heat, a lot of guys go through IV bags.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we were lucky we had good TAC medics taking care of us, but if you got to the point where you need a IV bag, you're no good to the team.
Yeah. So let's say, you get called out on, let's say it's a barricade subject. How long do you give the guy before it's like, because you can only stand out in the heat for so long, or up here in Idaho, in the cold,
right.
It goes either way. The weather can really wear on the guys, and they can only be out in it so long.
Well, and that's where, in my opinion, you have to have a backup team to come and relieve your guys, because we can't let, whether the street's been closed too long or whether it's too closed.
Yeah, you got
too
businesses,
cold.
you got people that need to go back to their homes.
Right. But how do we allow that to influence whether we're going to go in and force a shooting?
Yeah.
In somebody's life, we can't allow that to pressure us. It does pressure us. Yeah. But we shouldn't be thinking about it that way.
Because I've talked to guys, on other teams, other parts of the country, they have like a timeline, like on a barricade subject. They're like, yeah, we give the guy 30 minutes. If he doesn't come out, we breach the front door.
Yeah, no, well, that's not my philosophy. And that wasn't Vegas' philosophy back when I was with them either. It all depends on, are we making progress? And relying on your CNT. Yeah. They're that expert in that mental game of where are we getting at? Sometimes it takes 10 hours to talk a guy out. Sometimes it takes 10 minutes. Sometimes as soon as they see the Bearcats, they're coming out. But we can't put somebody's life on a timeline like that, unless somebody else's life is in peril, so yeah, like here, I would use the county team. If my guys have been out too long, but we're thinking we're making progress and we're going to be able to end this without violence, I'll bring out another team. Let my guys go get rested, and we'll come back in 8 hours. So now you're talking about this other team you're working with. It's a part-time team, right? Yep. What's the difference between the full-time team you worked on and being on a part-time team? Or what's some of the challenges that you have to work with? Yeah, there's, you just don't have the focus, Because guys, when we talk about a part-time team, right, for those who've not been in law enforcement, you have full-time teams, which is what we talked about, maybe 5% of the country, the cities, counties have a full-time team, and everybody else is a part-time team. And what that means is you have your primary duty, which is you're maybe on patrol or detectives, day to day, and then a couple days a week you train as a SWAT team, and then you're on call the rest of the time. So you might be doing your detective job or your patrol job when they have
domestic that turns into hostage incident, or they got to go serve a warrant, they call it SWAT team. You leave your primary duty to go out and do your part-time job, right?
Yep.
But that can be difficult because you're basically dividing your attention in your job to do a couple different things.
Right. And and you just don't have the focus where you're just getting better and better and better at your SWAT job because you're just not there every day.
Yeah.
Our guys, we're fortunate. We're well supported by our agency, but we follow the NTOA where our guys are getting 16 hours of training a month. We got some specialty guys. Our snipers get an extra day. Our breachers get an extra half day. Our rope technicians get an extra half day, but it's still never enough to feel completely confident in everything. And we got a lot of good guys, been doing it a long time, but we also got a lot of young guys who, when you're not doing very many missions a year, it takes a long time to get them up and feeling comfortable. So there's that challenge.
And like you were saying earlier, back in the day, 90s and 2000s, even the part-time teams were pretty busy serving it because they were serving all the narcotics warrants, for the meth and cocaine stuff was going on back in the day. Our SWAT team was, at least a couple times a month we're kicking doors, right? And then now we've sometimes I'm like, man, are we going to ever get used?
Yeah.
Right? So guys are doing like a dozen call-outs a year, it seems like, for part-time teams anymore.
Yeah, and it's changed the SWAT world a lot, and we've even changed how we're using our team now. We're starting to have limited deployment where we're not sending the whole team, but we're supplementing detectives and stuff like that to try to make it safer for them and also to free up some of their resources for the other things, which is kind of non-traditional, where a lot of teams it's all or nothing. Yeah. But we're trying to still be as safe as we can and have guys be able to use their specialties.
Do you think the reason why the full team doesn't get called out, and whether it's your agency or other agencies that have these part-time teams, is it driven by overtime money, or what drives that?
Some places, I'm sure. Ours is not. This is a new concept that we're working on, and it's
okay. All right, we had a little bit of technical difficulty there, but we're back. So we're talking about differences between or challenges for part-time teams.
Yeah, and we were talking about limited response models. Yeah, and how that's something
like partial call-outs, sending out half the team for something.
Right, because a lot of agencies have criteria of what's a SWAT call-out or SWAT usage and what's not, and there's a lot of in between. Like, man, this one could go either way, right? And so when there's agencies or divisions that want to serve a warrant, and it's it doesn't really meet the SWAT criteria, but they also don't feel comfortable or don't have enough guys. We're doing a lot of trying to support them, whether it's surveillance and takeaways and doing, especially when it comes to narcotics and stuff like that, where there's other evidence that they don't want destroyed, knowing that we're not going to go do a dynamic search warrant in there, let's take them away for you, and then we can lock down the house, and then you can preserve your evidence and stuff like that. And so we're supporting our other investigative divisions that way. Yeah. And so it's a different thought, but it also brings another, in my opinion, another way of safety, where we're sending a SWAT supervisor with SWAT operators, and then if they see the red flags, like, no, we need the whole team, then they're stopping it, slowing it down, and then they'll bring the rest of the guys, and then we'll go through our normal protocol from there. So, so it's just another way of looking at things, and so we're working through that. It's good.
Yeah, I think before we started recording, I was talking about a guy who come up and did a ride along with me years ago, and he worked for Riverside County down in California, and he said, he told me he was on a full-time team, and then as we started talking, he's like, well, actually, he goes, I'm on a street crimes unit, but all our SWAT team guys are members of the street crimes units, and so we're doing things as a street crime unit, but we're all SWAT guys. So I wish I'd like to see agencies in this valley take that kind of approach. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of benefit to that. I would like to see that at our agencies also here. gets political. That's
Yeah.
the tough thing about that because people feel that they are losing out on chances and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it's a difficult one, but I see a benefit to that, especially with how much they're training. So if you can get those guys out of patrol who are getting sucked away for training on a regular basis, that makes it hard on the patrol
Yeah.
teams. Then that alleviates that problem for that number of guys that you can put into those units and stuff. So
Yeah.
yep, definitely good to it.
What other things? What about training? Do you think it's harder for a part-time team to get training?
No, I don't think dedicated training. For the most part, there's times where we end up having a mission or whatever. But I think for the most part, our guys are well supported with the agency I'm with of allowing our guys to get there and they're getting most of it done. They all want more. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we're pretty well supported here. I can't say that about all the part-time teams.
Yeah.
But
What do you see as far as the difference in how well a SWAT guy is trained in a part-time team versus a full-time team? Do you think the guys are trained as well, but just maybe don't have as many missions behind them, or skill level-wise, individual skills?
Yeah, the training is similar. The training days are similar. Depending on the team, maybe the intensity I've seen lacking a little bit compared to what I'd come from. And I think one of the bigger differences is, go back to the Vegas team. We would debrief every single run, every single warrant, everything. And you're held pretty to a high standard of basically telling on yourself. If you screw it up, you better cop to it. Otherwise, somebody's going to punish you for it verbally, basically. But the whole goal is that we all learn from somebody's mistake. Every one of us learn from everybody else's mistake, so we don't do that same thing. And you get pretty critical of yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that doesn't necessarily happen at some of the smaller teams or the part-time teams where guys, one, they don't know that they're maybe making a mistake, or they don't feel confident enough to call themselves out in front of everybody that, hey, it's okay that I made a mistake. We got used to, they're not kicking me off the team because I made a mistake. They're going to kick me off the team when I make the same mistake over and over and over.
Sure.
But as long as I'm working on trying to get better, that's what we're all doing. Where I think some guys, maybe the part-time teams I've been around, they don't want anybody to know that they made a mistake.
Sure.
And so they're, with that attitude, you're not going to get any better if you're not willing to
And we're
call
talking
yourself
about
out.
mistakes. We're talking about maybe training in a shoot house and not maybe, I don't know, clearing your corner or whatever.
Reading the room wrong,
Yeah.
or shooting a no-shoot target or whatever it is, they don't want people to know that they screwed up. So that's one of the challenges I've seen, but it's just that lack of reps.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hard part.
So what about individual skill level shooting wise?
Well, here, I think Idaho is unique. We got some boys that can shoot, and I've been real proud of my guys. And so, as far as shooting, I haven't seen any lack, at least in this location, compared to my Vegas guys, where these guys are spot on. So.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. I had a friend of mine, Yang Lee. He's told me several times, because he's trained all over the country, different law enforcement agencies. He's a former SWAT guy out of the Washington area, and he's a national level pistol shooter, won some regional national championships and USPSA. And he's like, he goes, out of all the places I've taught all over the country, he goes, these Idaho cops can shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, when I first got up here, we brought in, and I didn't know who the guy was, but we brought in an ex-Delta guy who teaches a lot.
Yeah.
He's a great shooter, phenomenal shooter. And he ran a class for our guys, and it was a waste of money.
Yeah.
Because our guys were so much better than what I think he was expecting.
Yeah.
He didn't have a whole lot to help these guys with.
Yeah.
So, and that's where, people, I think sometimes people think of Idaho as those little Idahos, these bunch of podunk guys. That's not what it is. You know that. You've lived here long enough to understand how dedicated these guys are.
Yeah, we got
how
some
hard
guys.
they work.
I'd say our SWAT teams, especially in this valley here, organization's pretty good. Their equipment's pretty good, and individual training, individual skill level as far as shooting, most of the guys are all pretty good that I've worked with.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of specific individual guys that I know of that I didn't work with specifically, but I know the influence that they've made in the valley on the shooters that I think has helped a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I think that's good. I think the biggest, weakness is just that they just don't have the number of call-outs that a full-time agency does.
Yeah,
right.
That's always going to be the challenge. But it's also why we live in Idaho.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's the downside of living in a town where you got call-outs all the time. It means you live in a shitty neighborhood.
Yeah, but surprisingly, we have a lot of officer involved shootings in this valley.
Yeah, there are quite a few. Yeah, per capita, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think part of it is everybody in Idaho is allowed to own a gun and carry a gun, and there's no illegality about it.
Yeah.
So people are armed. Besides that, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it in the 4 years that I've been back to try to understand why that's happening.
But
it also could be just part of where we are in time nowadays.
Yeah.
Because it's not just here that's having more officer-involved shootings.
Yeah.
It's all around the
and
country.
the growth that we're having here is it's a lot more than a lot of other places.
Yeah.
Right? The growth, the number of people moving here is just out of control, really.
Yeah.
Right. But it seems like we have a lot of officer-involved shootings in this valley. It just seems like sometimes it's just like, oh, there's another one. Oh, another one. It's like seems like 2 or 3 a month sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a little surprising to me how many we've had.
Yeah. So it's not Mayberry around here, right?
Well, there's days it's not.
That's what I tell some of the guys. I go out They go like, "What's it like being a cop there?" I go, day to day, it's like shaking hands, kissing babies. I go, then all of a sudden somebody flips a switch and there's shots fired and guys are in the shooting. Mm-hmm. It kind of seems like it's like that. We don't have the ghetto crime like some of the big cities. You don't have all these armed robberies, drive-by shootings all the time, that kind of stuff. But yeah, when someone's having a bad day, it's a really bad day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's been interesting.
But hopefully our guys can continue to get good training and continue to get better. Is there anything that you want to add that you think would be beneficial to maybe guys that are either, on a team or trying to improve their teams better? Obviously there's a lot of aspects to law enforcement. We've kind of been mostly focusing on the SWAT aspect of it. Anything that you would like to see teams specifically train on, or how do they get their teams better with such little low number of missions?
Yeah, well, one of the things we've been focusing on, because it's a thing I've seen as a problem as SWAT teams go, when you look at training, what we've been trying to focus on is getting team training together where everybody gets the same training. Instead of sending two guys out to this school, and then 2 guys out to this other school, and 2 guys out to another school, and then they all come back and then they argue about what technique's the best. And then they never come to an agreement. And so none of that training ever gets incorporated into your team. Mm-hmm. By having teams all exposed to the same material, then they can have a good debate as how that you can use that material for their own team. So that's how we've been trying to use our training money to try to better the guys. We move together as a team and not as a bunch of individuals. And so
that's a good point, because I know looking back, and especially when you're a young officer, where you haven't been exposed to a lot of stuff, you go to a school, by yourself or with one other guy, and all of a sudden you're exposed to something new. You come back and you think it's the latest, greatest thing. And the rest of the team is just like, either we've tried that already or it didn't work, or, whatever. But the team already has its own tactics, and you come back wanting to change everything right away instead of just coming back and going, hey, this is what I learned. These are 1 or 2 things we can take away from it, but doesn't necessarily mean we have to change everything the team is doing.
Yeah, and then normally the guys who went out and learned something, the way they interpret it, the way they bring it back is not the purest amount of information, so they're usually not doing the best to represent it. So it's hard for the guys who are now listening to
Yeah, because you always lose something in translation, right?
Right. So it's never the pure information. So anyways, that's one of the things I recommend, and it seems to be working pretty well for us.
And I really hope one of my, I guess, pet peeves is, I see a lot, especially in rural areas, you have a lot of these part-time SWAT teams, and it's expensive to run a team, right?
Yeah.
Even a part-time team, it's expensive if you want to do it right.
Yep.
And do it right, you got to have all the equipment, you got to have the training. And like say, a lot of teams, they try to follow the NTOA standard, which is 16 hours a month for training, and they also have standards of your capabilities when it comes to the type of equipment you have and so forth. And what I've seen over the many years is you got a lot of these part-time teams that are rural, and they're given some a uniform BDUs. They have an M4, maybe some helmets and lights on their guns, and they'll go do 4 hours of training every quarter, and they call themselves a team. And that's not really a team. To me, either do it right or don't do it, and I see that a lot. And you see, and this has been many years ago, 20 some years ago now. I remember over in Jerome, they had a shooting where they had their SWAT team served a warrant, and 2 of their deputies were killed on the same entry.
Wow.
And I went to a SWAT school where they used that as a case study. And in my mind, I was just thinking, I was like, man, but were they really a SWAT team?
Yeah.
Are they really what a team is supposed to be, where they have the training, not just the equipment, not just a rifle, but they have real modern day equipment, a rifle with lights on it. Maybe the guys are running helmets, and do they have an actual team where all of them have been to training, not just 1 or 2 guys, and they're training regularly? And if they're not training regularly, to me, they're not really a SWAT team.
Right. Yeah. The training's everything, and running them through over and over where they know what they're supposed to do in a given situation, it takes time. And then also having good leaders, and that's where I'm really fortunate with the team that I'm allowed to be a part of. I got good leaders who understand the mission, understand the purpose. We're a life-saving organization, what a SWAT team is. It's what police departments are, right? Yeah. And that's our first goal in helping guys to understand that that's what we're going to do, and then working as a team and not some individuals, who are all together. Yeah. That's the other key. So yeah, that is a challenge. Yeah, big time.
So you were on entry team for many years. You also you were a sniper for a while too, weren't you?
Yeah, I got the opportunity to be a sniper for about 3 years. Yep. Yeah. So and in understanding the way Vegas runs at that point, you're still an entryman. Everybody's an entryman, always an entryman, but
So you're cross trained, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but on during those 3 years, during the call outs and the sniper or the HRTs, I'd be behind the gun and running that. Yep. So that was great. It was fun. Yeah, I like that because you go train by yourself a lot. That was the nice thing, especially there in Vegas. On Sundays, you go shoot every Sunday.
You never used your rifle for hunting or anything like that, did you?
I did not, because I didn't hunt. And I don't know if you know this, in Las Vegas, not a lot of good hunting. So, yeah. No. Yeah. It would have been a good one, though. It was a nice AI, so.
What were you guys running for sniper rifles?
Back then, as AIs, I think they still have them now, but now they've got the folding stocks, and
Were you guys running 308 calibers?
Yeah, just 308. Yeah. We all had, for the snipers back then, everybody had. You still had your M4 as your entry gun. Then you had a precision 223 for our intermediate, and we had a lot of trailers and stuff like that. We and we were so close in the majority of our areas of operation. We always had a little bit of concern for some over penetration and stuff like that. So we had some other opportunities. Then you had your 308, which your main gun was, and then guys either had a 338 or they had a 50. So I had a 338 for during that time. So.
And why would you guys need a caliber like a 338 or a 50?
It's that intermediate barriers. If you got vehicles or something like that we're going to have to deal with, that we had that option to.
Did you guys ever have an incident where you had to use a 338 or a 50?
No, not during the time I was there.
Yeah.
No, but after, all that came after, you had the incident in Colorado with the bulldozer, and you had the guy down in San Diego with the tank.
Yeah,
after
that's
that,
right.
that's when agencies started grabbing those up and realizing there are, because we had Nellis Air Force Base. We had a bomb threat and a guy with a vehicle out in Nellis that they brought us out for one time, that they were thinking about shooting it, but afraid of blowing up the truck. So we didn't. So thank goodness he was full of crap. And not full of explosives.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. It's been great hearing your stories and the experience you have, which is a lot. You were on a team for how long?
10 years on that team.
10 years. And on a team where, combined with your two teams doing 500-600 missions a year, that's a lot of experience.
Yeah, it was good. I was very fortunate.
And then you left the team right before you retired, correct?
About 7 years before I promoted to sergeant, and so when you promote, they kick you out. And so
And you were part of a unit that investigated officer-involved shootings?
that was the last year, yeah. And then probably the funnest job I ever did was the job before that. I was part of their it's a criminal apprehension team that's all for the fugitives, for all the fugitives in Las Vegas, and that would come in, and so all of our homicide suspects and stuff like that, it was all the guys were doing was searching for pretty much shooters. And that was
So the SWAT team wouldn't take those?
well, we ended up, I would call them in. We got in a couple of officer-involved shootings, or we'd get people locked down, and guys would start shooting at us, and we'd keep it tied down until the SWAT team could come there for us. So we had several of those missions, but most of ours were open-air takedowns type of things, stuff like that, a lot of vehicle takedowns, and then we would try to get guys locked into houses, and most of them would come out, but when they wouldn't, we'd get the SWAT team to come in.
Yeah.
We weren't pretending we were a SWAT team, but we were. It was a lot of fun.
But the guys don't like to give that up, do they?
They don't like to give that up, no.
They want to apprehend the guy.
And they want to go in, and they want to,
Is that pretty hard on the guys who are not on a SWAT team when you're like, oh, we're going to have to call a SWAT team?
Yeah, especially, especially because it was a task force, so you got guys from different agencies. We had guys from North Las Vegas, Anderson, FBI, and so everybody sees it different. And I was a sergeant, but they're assigned to us. But
That wasn't like one of those marshals task forces, or
we had a marshal task force. This one was an FBI led one that I was on. So doing the same type of work, but because we got Vegas gave us, the homicide bureau gave us all of their warrants.
Yeah.
And so it went straight to us. It didn't go to the marshals. It went to us. So that team we were way busier than the marshals just because of the relationships that we had. So,
awesome.
It was fun.
Well, I think we'll call it here. We've been talking for quite a while. I don't know, hour and a half, I think, something like that, about an hour and a half. So, but it's been good talking to you, and we'll have to have you on again sometime. I'm sure you have a couple other incidents we might be able to talk about and debrief.
All right. Sounds good, Ro.
So, all right. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.